This is TWiT.
Microsoft announced this week that they're going to, kill Skype in May, pretty quickly, actually. But then again, they've been talking about this for about 3 years, so this shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody.
And they've been neglecting Skype for as long as
yes, they have. There was a bit of bad timing when the pandemic happened. For all of us, but for Skype in particular, because Microsoft was all hot and heavy on Teams, and it was exploding in usage. And Teams, of course, is part of Microsoft 365 commercial. It's a moneymaker. It's a big reason for customers either to stay with or adopt Microsoft 365. Classic Microsoft bundling strategy, et cetera. They only made a couple of passing moves with regards to free usage during the pandemic, and Zoom ran away with that, right? Obviously, Zoom, the pandemic was the best thing that ever happened to Zoom, if you think about it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they ran out of ideas. Now they've made it horrible, tried to be a platform, but
because that's what we want. Yeah.
The pandemic was the height of Skype, truly.
Yep. But it was good for Teams.
This network wouldn't exist without Skype. Paul, you and I know. For years, that's what we used.
Yep.
That's what we did on .NET Rocks, too.
There was a lot of back and forth with Skype over the years because, my little tie-in with it is the original version of this app was written in Delphi, right?
Was it really?
The client
the front
app,
end?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And, it used a kind of a peer-to-peer network.
Yeah, because Zenstrom and Friis, the guys who wrote it, had written, was it Kazaa? They wrote a peer-to-peer
I don't know if they wrote it
system.
or if they were inspired by it.
I think that was their first product. Okay. Yeah. And so they use the same peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's what Microsoft killed when they bought it. And that was when Skype started to go downhill.
Yes. So Microsoft, you've probably heard the term client server. They're kind of big in this. I know.
Well, the other part of this was phones, right? You can't peer-to-peer to a phone, not when people are paying
so you lost
data.
You lost that. And that was one of the greatest things about Skype. I remember my daughter did her junior year of high school in France for a whole year. I got for $90, I got her a Skype phone number, and we could Skype together for free.
You can't peer-to-peer to phones. So first they did the Kazaa supernodes. They put those everywhere.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I when Skype, you have to remember Skype is 25 years old or whatever it's 20 something years old, and the world of 20 whatever years ago is quite different from today. Right? We didn't have pervasive broadband internet. We didn't have mobile phones, or smartphones like we know them today, I should say. And the feature you just mentioned, the ability to buy credits and then call landlines or cellular phones or whatever we would have called them back in the day, was very useful.
Skype out, which they did right away.
Yeah, especially for international or long distance calls that were still very expensive in that time frame. Today everyone has a smartphone, so there's much less of a need for that type of feature. If someone were inventing Skype today, that wouldn't even come up.
Well, and the pressure on them on the entire telco industry to go VoIP anyway.
That's right.
Skype was part of that. They weren't the only ones. There was a bunch of services out there that did.
Yeah. So I've been around long enough. I've been writing about Skype since the beginning, and I kind of went back and kind of reacquainted myself with the history there and wrote up a very long thing about that if you want to read it. But to me, the interesting bit is that, well, there's a couple of things. So when Microsoft acquired Skype for, I think it was $8.5 billion in cash, by the way, it was by far their biggest acquisition at that time, super controversial. An argument that would repeat itself later with Teams when Microsoft.
I think they way overpaid for it.
Okay, they were trying to buy
Yahoo,
Slack 20 years later, and Bill Gates.
But I'm thinking in context of the reason that Ballmer paid $8.5 billion for Skype when it wasn't worth that is he just failed at the Yahoo acquisition.
Yeah, and that's right, and that was $45
kind of wanted a mark
million.
to show he could buy something.
Yep. But it was okay, right? So, it was horribly overvalued, et cetera, and was their biggest acquisition. But if you look at it, the thing that's kind of curious about that to me today is it's still their fourth biggest acquisition of all time, even today. Yes. More than they spent on GitHub, more than they spent on Nokia, which is the one I think a lot of us would kind of remember as kind of a big deal, right? That was a huge deal, and that was many years later. No, it wasn't. It was several years later. But
this was what, $8 billion they spent? What it was?
8.5. Yeah. LinkedIn though, 26.2 billion.
That's the thing. The numbers have really
they're hard. So like Nuance, 19.7. That's crazy money. So LinkedIn, Nuance, Skype, then smaller things that don't make the big list like Yammer, et cetera, are things that have been integrated into the kind of Microsoft stack. Right. That was the first thing that they did after they acquired Skype. Skype started appearing all over Microsoft's product. But the controversy to me at the time was more just the same controversy that Bill Gates brought up about buying Slack, which is we already have this stuff. I don't understand like what, we had whatever MSN Messenger by that time was Windows Live Messenger or whatever. They had Lync by that point, which used to be Office Communications. In the commercial space, there was, I don't know if they called it Federation, but there was the ability to communicate back and forth across that divide. What are we getting here? And yeah, I don't know. They got a really good brand. Like you discussed earlier, had to change the infrastructure, which I think they did twice actually.
Mm-hmm. Well, the immediate fix, which is we can't be caught using other people's machines, was to build out the super nodes and just direct. You continue to use a variation on the CASA protocol to direct through the super nodes.
Well, Teams is still using this, right? I mean,
Azure.
That's the thing.
The back end is still Teams.
I think that to messaging at Microsoft or communications, whatever you want to call this, Skype is essentially what NT is to Windows, right? When Windows 2000 came out, remember the horrible tagline "built on NT technology." I think I made this crack when Teams came out. I'm like, is there going to be a little thing in the dialogue that says built on Skype technology? Because, no. No. The answer
pretty much
is no.
guarantee not.
No.
Well, the codec that Skype built is the one that Teams uses.
Like, and it's by the way, why we use Skype. It was the best codec. It was
fantastic. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And even today, we were talking about this yesterday with Alex Lindsay. He says, because that codec would use as much bandwidth as you had, unlike Zoom, which tops out at a few megabits a second. It would use 20 megabits if it could. And so you could get really amazing quality.
Yes, that's right. And they offer that professional version, remember, for broadcasters.
Yeah, Skype TX, or VX.
Yep. Yeah, we tried. I think we tried very briefly.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. But
remember, Colin, you have, by the way, kudos, a great history of Skype as part of your premium.
Yeah, you wrote a great piece there, Paul.
I just loved it.
I didn't even, you can't really hit on everything. It would be a book,
it's huge.
But it was, yeah.
Well, you left us out, but that's okay.
Okay.
Look at you, young Paulie. Oh, was that your first Skype? My first Skype call?
Well, that was at the
Messenger.
time probably Windows Live Messenger or whatever.
Yeah. We remember, I don't know if you remember, but in order to have multiple people on our shows, Colleen built what she called Skypeosaurus. This is back when we were in the cottage, which was a bunch of Mac Minis. Each caller had one Mac Mini, and there were a bunch of Skype calls then conferenced together.
Yeah, I did it with old laptops. I literally just had a laptop sitting on a stand side by side, separate Skype accounts for each one, and you just hook up each person,
and you'd call into that one, and then we put them all together in a mixer, and we did that for a long time. And then we tried the Skype TX
when it came along.
BizRT offered that, and we tried it, and we weren't crazy. Thank goodness Zoom came along, because we actually get great results doing it. So
yeah.
We're not on Zoom now, by the way. We're on Restream.
Yeah, we went over to Riverside. We tried Zencaster for a while.
So those are WebRTC. This is a WebRTC solution. So is Riverside.
It's all basically the same thing.
And Alex said you're going to regret it. He does not like WebRTC. That's what
it's got its problems. There's no two ways about it.
Zoom is the best, and so we do still use Zoom with Ecamm on some of our shows like TWiT, but I like to switch the shows, so we use Restream for the shows that I'm sitting here switching.
But Sorry. Skype comes from desktop land. It never really was meant for mobile.
That's probably the problem.
This was, remember that we had those USB mics on a stick, that was sitting on a stand. We would, it's a different era. This is the, and this, like Windows Phone, you can't point at a thing and say that's why that's
no. But I would say WhatsApp.
Yes,
came first,
okay, that's definitely,
and it was phone centric.
Actually, before that, even there were things like Apple did like iChat first on the Mac, right? Google did whatever. Google, it wasn't Meet, the Google Chat, whatever, G Chat, back in the day. And they were very much desktop based in the beginning because it was that era. But also these were companies that got into mobile and thus had to make that work.
Yeah.
So they just did I think they just did a better job of
where WhatsApp was mobile first, and it just had the biggest thing that WhatsApp did right that everybody else struggled with was because they made it phone number centric. Then your phone book was immediately available, and anybody who had a phone number, boom, like your graph built itself.
Yeah. So you can, if you look at the timeline for this stuff, so iChat is early days of Mac OS 10, right?
Yeah.
So it's 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
Microsoft had MSN Messenger in the beginning that actually dates back to the 90s, and it evolved through the whole Windows Live phase, et cetera. Macs or iChat comes to iPhones, as does FaceTime eventually, right in 2010. Skype comes up in whatever that time frame was.
2005, 2005.
So, but mobile messaging to me was like the divide, right? So it's like BlackBerry obviously was huge, not phone centric, phone only, but BlackBerry only, right? But then iPhone happens, Android happens a year later. But that's when we start getting, like you said, WhatsApp is 2009, WeChat 2011. Like you start seeing these WhatsApp to this day calling it mobile focused or phone focused is a gross understatement. Yeah. If you ever try to use WhatsApp on your PC,
which I do
on your Mac, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a nightmare.
It's terrible. It's totally mobile centric.
It's phone link for one app.
And to be clear, even today, its audio and video stuff is not great. It's a group chat tool.
Yep. Yeah. But I think the final, I don't think, it's pretty obvious. The final nail in the coffin is Slack. And Slack has its own kind of funny history because that company they were trying to make a game and failed. And he was like, well, maybe I'll do this completely different thing. And they came up with what was eventually called Slack, and they changed the name of the company to Slack. And, this notion of like a chat-based interface for real-time collaboration, right? And this is probably, I'm trying to think, I guess 2013. So same year Microsoft bought Nokia, if I'm not mistaken, or right within a year of that. Slack occurs and is popular with the same kind of companies that would do Google Docs, or today Notion, or smaller companies like startups and all this kind of stuff. And I, having used Slack, like to reuse your joke from before, Richard, I can assure you it's freaking terrible and I hate it so much. But but the thing that Microsoft did that I thought was really innovative with Teams that I think was smart and is as much of a reason for its success as, say, bundling it with, Microsoft 365, also smart, by the way.
Yeah.
Unless you care about antitrust, is they understood, like Slack was, this is how we do it. Microsoft was like, hold on a second. We have this installed base, billion probably people using what are now, yes, old-fashioned tools like like Outlook, where we're communicating and collaborating over email. Or, something heavy like SharePoint or whatever. So Microsoft reuses SharePoint right there. It's what's on the back end of Teams, but they put it next to Outlook and they allow these things to interoperate. So if you're one of the old school guys, graybeard, whatever, you're like, nope, I'm never chatting. I'm not a child. There's no emoticons happening here. You can do all your stuff through Outlook. The young guys, the forward-leaning people, whatever, adapt to this very quickly. You'll love it, whatever, they're familiar with it. And you're all communicating and collaborating together. SharePoint's on the back end, the great Satan. But you have these two different front ends, and that was smart. And that's what I think would allow this thing to kind of come forward. I had forgotten about this, by the way. The original name of Teams was Skype Teams.
Right.
Of course it was.
Well, because they literally were using the same codec. But they had to tie to SharePoint.
Yeah, and Skype for Business took over for Link at some point. I don't remember the history there exactly, but
it started as Office or live communications server.
Yep.
Right, going back into the Vista era, and then that as it got to R2, they renamed it to Link. And then they renamed that to Skype for Business.
Yeah,
we could throw response point into the equation if you wanted, like the number of telfo efforts that Microsoft had that ran into each other.
Response points, it was interesting because that was a solution initially for small businesses. Yeah. I actually had three.
I had one in the house.
I had three sets at one point, different versions. It was a good idea for that era, right? It was a different time. But the other thing I think this is not in my article, but the other thing that Teams did over time. So the pandemic happened. That was the focus. They very rapidly upgraded it, but they turned it into a platform, which is always going to be controversial. But they made it extensible with, you can call them apps, whatever, extensions, doesn't matter, but you can run apps inside of Teams, right? Which was, is a common model. I mean, Slack does the same thing, but it's fascinating to me. I bet Teams as a platform is certainly more active than Windows as a platform as far as new app development goes. But it's got to be in the terms of just number of users and whatever as a platform is got to be in the top 5 of Microsoft, probably top 3, right? It's big. Like it was smart. And plus you get all the stuff you get with Microsoft 365 commercial around compliance and policy and regulation, et cetera. So it's good.
Hey, it's me, Leo Laporte. I hope you've enjoyed this little snippet from Windows Weekly. If you want to see more, want to catch the whole show, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast client or visit our website, twit.tv/WW. And of course, there's links right below me.